Should I put your name too? Should I write Megan and Jesse cards? No. You just want my name, but we're both here. We are mute.
Alrighty there.
Okay.
So.
What's that?
Did you put your name and address in the chat box?
I did not.
Hey, Greg, just wanted to circle back on that Q3 forecast and try and land the plane from a KPI standpoint.
Please mute your audio.
Get it together. Hmm. Okay. Assuming everybody's here, this is Frank Lynch, and this is the workshop meeting of the Susquehanna Township Board of Commissioners, June 24th, 2021. I would note that all commissioners are here with the exceptions of Gary Rothrock, Mona Johnson, and Fred Engel, all of whom are excused. The board did meet in executive session to discuss matters of litigation and personnel. Mr. Kratzer, just to make it official, can you please do a roll call of the board?
I'd be happy to, Mr. President. Commissioner Robarczyk.
Here.
Commissioner Rothrock is excused. Commissioner Johnson, also excused. President Lynch.
Here.
Commissioner Pine.
Here.
Commissioner Sanderson.
Here.
Commissioner Engel, also excused. Commissioner Fleming.
Here.
And Vice President Napper.
Here.
Very good. Thank you. First up is public comment. We'll divide public comment into two areas tonight. First, I know a number of folks are interested in expressing concerns about Montrose, the development project along 3401, 3405 North Front Street. And that is not on the agenda for tonight. That will not be considered by the Board of Commissioners until July 22nd. However, if anybody wishes to address that subject tonight, you're more than welcome to do so. We'll be happy to hear you out. So we'll divide into two segments. Anybody wishing to speak on Montrose will speak to the board first, and then anybody with any other general concerns that they wish the board to hear will obviously be happy to hear. I would ask that anybody addressing the board raise your hand or signal somehow to Betsy Logan, who is our switchboard operator extraordinaire tonight. She has the ability to get you to the microphone and to our attention. So I would just ask that anybody wishing to address the board, limit your comments to 3 minutes. Please tell us your name and your address, and then go for it. So Betsy, do we have anybody in the queue?
Yes, I'm sorry. Tanya Leshko would like to speak.
Okay.
Hi, thank you. I live at 3503 North 2nd Street. I have many things to say about the Montrose Street development, but I have been writing to you all, so I expect that you know at least some of my concerns. My invitation to every commissioner to meet me for a cup of coffee and explain to me why it's a good idea to grant waivers for a project that completely flies in the face of the Sustainable Susquehanna 2030 plan. You know, what is the advantage for the township? I would love to hear that. I will buy the coffee. In the meantime, I urge everyone to, or I urge all the commissioners to please consider having the July 22nd meeting in person. It is really genuinely difficult for some of my neighbors to manage the technology. And they are concerned and they have a lot to say, and they would like to participate in, you know, to exercise their right to speak to their elected officials. So I urge the commission to consider having the July 22nd meeting in person to accommodate some of the people who live in this neighborhood. And again, I would love to meet you for a cup of coffee. Call me. Thank you.
Thanks, Tanya. And just for the edification of the audience, we are anticipating having an in-person meeting on July 22nd. We'll obviously have to take safety measures, and we're still wrestling with that, how exactly we'll do that. But we do anticipate an in-person meeting, but we'll get to that later on in this meeting.
Thank you, Commissioner. And one more thing, I'm sorry, I forgot to say. I would like to note that it was kind of my impression, and may be mistaken, I'm not sure, that part of the reason that time frames have been extended is to allow the developer to address some of the concerns that are being expressed by the community. I am not acquainted with anyone who has heard from the developer, and if anyone has, I invite them to, you know, speak on this line, or you know, get into the chat and say that they've spoken to the developer. I understand that maybe the developer is dealing with a lawsuit that was filed against some of the neighbors, but that's not the same thing. Dealing with your lawsuit is not actually dealing with community concerns. So I'm not spoken to the developer. I don't know anyone who's spoken to the developer, but I invite anyone who is aware of any contact with the, you know, any community representatives or anybody who lives here. I don't know, we have representatives who live here. But I'm not aware that that has occurred at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else, Betsy?
Yes, I have Jade Honey would like to speak.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your time. Jade and Tyler Honey at 305 Montrose Street. I wanted to just note that I would invite you all down to Montrose Street, and I'd like you to stand at the corner of Montrose and 2nd. And if you're not familiar with the Friends of Montrose Street page, I would invite you to look at the video and the pictures that we took yesterday. We lined the street with the vehicles in the spaces in which the developer is anticipating to put on the street. And I would like to note that in the hour that I stood there, there was almost 4 accidents of people trying to turn on to Montrose from Front Street and people trying to turn on to, from 2nd onto Montrose, because the vehicles, you can't see over top of them if they are too far up. The amount of traffic that is on this street is enough. We don't need any more. I watch children every day play in the street, play basketball, play soccer. The last thing we need on this street is more traffic. I would also really encourage the commissioners to not only consider a traffic study, because I think it's just good due diligence to do your work as elected officials, but I would also ask that you engage the township police and ask them how many accidents they have recorded on this street and how many tickets they have issued for people that have run stop signs on the street. It is a problem, it is a continuous problem, and I don't foresee a dialysis center at the end of our street, which will create far more traffic, to be the solution to that. Lastly, I would offer you up about 13 to 20 other properties that are available commercial properties within the township that are well accessible, already built, perfect areas to generate tax dollars, because we recognize that this is about tax dollars. But I would invite you to sincerely explore what those opportunities might look like, because a historic, well-established neighborhood, in our opinion, is not the place for a dialysis center. So I welcome your comments and your thoughts on at least considering a traffic study at this point. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Jane.
Next,
Yep. Go
right,
ahead,
next I
Betsy.
have Sheila Heaps.
You're on mute, Sheila, Mister.
Thank you. I'm John Heaps, 3497 Green Street. I concur with the previous comments. I'd like to make a comment about making a left-hand turn recently from Front Street onto Montrose. When I made that turn, on the north side of the Montrose Street, a police officer had stopped a car and was proceeding to give the driver a ticket. On the south side of the Montrose Street, a truck was stopped trying to fix something on it. That was only 3 vehicles, and I had a very difficult time getting through there. My understanding is that they're planning to have 7 parking spaces there. And from what the previous commenter said, they tried getting through there. That's going to be a real problem. I concur. I think there needs to be a traffic study done on that area. About 5 years ago, there was a horrific accident on Front Street involving about 6 or 7 vehicles. And I would also ask the police about tickets that they've been giving to people not stopping at stop signs all along Montrose Street. Another item is, I understand that the developer is suing 3 neighbors who are built into the deed. And those neighbors, as I understand it, are to give their consent to any development that occurs on the property, and they have not done that. I find it very difficult that people who are going to develop and move into the neighborhood are not reaching out to the neighbors to find out about their concerns. It doesn't bode well for a good relationship if they are to build here. Today, I went on a bike ride down on Front Street, and I was on Front and Vaughan, and wastewater was going through the sewer system into the river. I know this is not our prerogative, but 1 block north where the building would be built, what is the wastewater that is going to go from that building into the river? And how is that going to affect the river? I think there needs to be an environmental study done with respect to this development. Also, the local newspaper had a picture of the governor's mansion during the 1972 Agnes flood. I know we're a little higher here, but I don't know if we're that high to be dry. I think that we need to understand what the impact of the river flooding would be on that property. If I were a patient going to that facility and knew that there was a potential for a flood, I don't know if I would want to be a patient there, fearing the inconsistency of operation that might occur there. Finally, I'd like to mention, as previously, the Susquehanna Township plan is designed for that area on Front Street to be neighborhood friendly looking. I've looked at the plans for the development. I don't see how this development is compatible with that plan. The previous commenter said she had 20 places where they could build this building within the township. The old Howard Johnson's property, which is about 3/4 of a mile north, is about an acre. That's 43,500 square feet, more than ample, no waivers needed. It seems to be a better site. Thank you for consideration, and I'm happy to hear that the July 22nd meeting will be in person. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next I have Sam.
Hi, Sam Levine with my wife Irene at 3501 North 2nd Street. Just to one of the positive things, if anything positive to come out of this, is that personally I became aware of the 2030 plan. I think it's admirable that Susquehanna Township has put together this 2030 plan, and I urge you to abide by some of the items that are in that plan. And certainly some of the requests for waivers for this proposed building at the corner of, which is across the street from me, 2nd and Montrose, do not certainly comply with the long-term plan. Whether it's sidewalks, whether it's setback, whether it's parking, whether it's trees, it just does not coincide with the long-term plans of Susquehanna Township. Like Tanya, I'd be happy to meet anyone, walk the neighborhood, and probably if you do it on a very hot night, you will hear the HVAC from Eddie Evans Woodside, which is deafening. And that's just the things that we're trying to avoid through this. It's not that any of us are anti-development. It's that if it's going to be developed, it should be developed correctly and in line with this residential neighborhood. And when you look at what Eddie Evans did to put their HVAC exposed to 2nd Street, how that ever got through Susquehanna Township Planning Commission, I have no idea. It's just ridiculous on a hot night when you hear that HVAC going. It's deafening. I'm just glad I don't live directly across the street from that, because if so, I probably would have moved a long time ago. I've been here for 35 years, witnessed many accidents at not only the corner of 2nd and Montrose where we live, but certainly on the corner of Front and Montrose. I had mentioned this before. It's been mentioned here on the call this evening. I was involved myself in an accident there, and it's just a really bad corner. Right now, because of the shutdown of the state's not back to work yet. Traffic is somewhat manageable, but once the state goes back, it's going to be back to where it was, where to make a left-hand turn onto Front Street is going to be extremely difficult.
I don't know.
All right, thank you, Sam. Betsy, anybody else wish to speak?
Yes, I apologize. I muted Sam. I don't know if he was finished. I meant to.
Oh, sorry, Sam.
Who keeps unmuting? So I apologize. Sam, did you have more you wanted to add?
I'm good, thanks.
All right, thank you very much.
The next person I have to speak is Ray Davis.
Hi, my name is Ray Davis. I live at 3434 Green Street, and I won't repeat the points that everyone else has made, although I'm in 100% agreement with everybody's comments thus far. I would just like to say two things. The developer, I believe, when they presented the plan, asked for a waiver for sidewalks because they said this is not a walking neighborhood. I invite anybody, any time of day, any of the commissioners to spend some time on Green Street, Montrose 2nd, and you'll see that it is a very active walking and biking neighborhood. I am not of the Jewish faith, but I must say that it was pointed out to me when I moved to this neighborhood, and I do sell residential real estate. It was pointed out to me that the neighborhood is considered to be part of the Eruv, and I'd welcome any of the commissioners to look the definition of that up. but it's basically, and maybe Sam or Irene can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's basically an area that's determined, that's within walking distance to synagogues, and people of the Jewish faith choose to live in the Eruv, within the Eruv, which this property is located, so that they can walk to the synagogue and so forth, because on the Sabbath, some Jewish people are not allowed to drive. So not only is it a walking neighborhood for recreation, but it is a walking neighborhood for people of the Jewish faith. So they couldn't be more wrong about that. The second thing I would like to reiterate, which I said at the last meeting, and I feel extremely strongly about, and perhaps that's because of my background in residential real estate, but there is a lawsuit over some of the owners who are subject to the same deed restrictions because they won't sign off on the deed restrictions. I will never understand how you can sue anybody because they fail to sign off on deed restrictions. The developers, the owners of the property knew these deed restrictions when it was purchased. There's no excuse for them to ask for a waiver or sue somebody because they won't sign off on deed restrictions. That is just absurd. 30 years of selling real estate, I've never known something like that to happen. Thanks very much for your attention.
Next I have Megan Carnes.
Hello, my name is Megan Carnes. I live at 200 Montrose Street, and this is my son Jesse. He lives here with me. We have lived here, and this is Janelle too. We have lived here for less than 6 months. So we're some of the newest neighbors, but we're very happy to be here. One of the most important reasons why we moved to this neighborhood is because it's a walking neighborhood. That was at the top of my list, and I really valued that, the interconnected sidewalk system, the walking path that goes along the river, both going south and north with this just little break in the middle that doesn't have anything. So let's be real here. There are miles and miles south. There are miles and miles north with just this little break where this property happens to be. And the only way we'll ever get a truly interconnected system is if we build it piece by piece. And this is the time for this piece of property. So I mean, I know that something's going to get built there. I don't think that the dialysis center is the right thing, but whatever gets built there really needs to have a complete sidewalk system that matches the rest of the neighborhood, because that is everything else around it other than a couple of scattered properties are part of the interconnected grid. And this needs to be too. And that just addresses one of the waivers, but there's a lot of waivers they're asking for. They're asking for you, for us as the community, to give them exceptions to the rules that we've set. And we shouldn't do that. Regardless of what property, whatever gets built there, we shouldn't give them exceptions to our rules. I think they need to build the trees, they need to build the sidewalk, they need to have the proper stormwater system, no waivers. Jesse, do you want to add anything?
No.
Janelle? I think that's it for us. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, man.
Next I have Steve Guston.
Steve, they're calling you.
Is Steve Guston on the line?
He is on the line.
Yes,
He's not.
here. Hello. Can you hear? Hello.
Hi, Steve.
Hi.
Frank
Thank
Lynch.
you. Oh my. I
Long
hate
time.
him.
Yeah.
Long time, Frank. How are
Yep.
you?
Good, thanks. For the general interest, Steve and I went to grade school together.
Yes.
And he was the smartest kid in class, and I was the last.
I don't think so.
I
But
do.
yeah. Hey, thank you for listening to me. My husband, Dan Mundis, and I have lived here since 2001. And the neighborhood is beautiful. We love it. I've got some issues with the proposed development. I don't think, we live in a beautiful neighborhood and we don't need a strip mall kind of thing here. And, we tried to talk to the developers. I understand that they thought that this was their what they want to do everywhere, but I've seen 2 other places where they have at least done in the neighborhood what looked right. So I have to question their motivations on what they want to develop here. I've seen the covenants, the no hospitals, let's not mince words, the proposed development is basically a hospital. So let's get over that. They want to waive the sidewalks. I've owned property in Rehoboth Beach. I've seen where developers put macadam sidewalks in. I thought they were temporary. Now, that's what they want to do. No, it does not look good. So the waivers that these developers are requesting are totally inappropriate for our area. And to be honest with you, the traffic since we've been here since 2001 has increased. And that's okay. I understand traffic increases, but I have been on Front in Montrose. I have been rear-ended twice trying to pull into Montrose Street. And I noticed that Friends of Montrose put cars on Montrose, which is what the developers want waived. And I watched as we went down at 5 o'clock, turning on Second, because we knew we couldn't turn left on Front. The cars were backed up on Front. There was somebody trying to make a right on Montrose to Front, and a car was on Front Street trying to make a left into Montrose. It was a cluster. Sorry, nobody knew what to do. So if a traffic study hasn't been done on that corner, that needs to be done. That's all I have to say. Thank you all. Thank you for your consideration.
All right, thanks, Steve. Betsy?
I have Debbie Tramontine.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Debbie Tramontine, and I live with my husband, Michael Jeanette, at 205 Montrose Street. So many issues to cover, and I'll just pick a couple that other people haven't covered. We're talking about tax revenue, I'm sure. I drove around to all of the buildings in Dauphin County that are owned by Linlow Properties, and I also found on our Susquehanna Township website that we recently did a tax settlement for one of Linlow's properties. They have a lot of empty space here already. I don't think we're doing them huge disservice by letting them use some of that other space. They don't appear in all of the properties, and I found about 17 between Dauphin County and Cumberland County, and a couple down in Chambersburg, one in Lebanon, one in Hershey, all in office parks. All of them are in office parks. They're not in residential neighborhoods. I found a couple that they may have built. I couldn't tell for sure if one of them had been built yet or not. The plans were online and the buildings are for sale, but I'm not sure that I didn't drive down to Chambersburg to check. I am kind of surprised that they want to put something like this in a residential neighborhood. And I'm particularly confused by why people that mainly just buy buildings that are existing and make them nice and fill them up, and that's great. I'm a capitalist too, I'm all for that. But they don't seem to have ever built anything in a flood zone or outside of an existing office park. This isn't an office park. We can't turn this into an office park. One of our neighbors posted in the comments over here about the Wendy's. I just drove up. I have some family friends in town right now, and I drove the kids up to Wendy's just about an hour ago to get a hamburger. And when I was coming out, I noticed, okay, I can't turn left between 4 and 8 p.m. I can't turn left, so I had to turn right. And then to turn right, I had to go through her neighborhood actually in order to get back to my house. And I apologize about that. Maybe I won't go to Wendy's anymore because I don't want to be driving through people's neighborhoods in order just to get where I need to go. One of the things that really bothers me about this is the proximity to 81. My husband's commute used to be there, and I went out there quite a bit to Carlisle, and this was a mess up here by Montrose Street, both coming and going in the morning, early in the morning, late in the day, you know, from about 3 o'clock on. And right now, I know we have a lot of people out of work. They're working from home, the state, but they're getting ready to return in a couple of weeks. And once they do that, we're going to see a massive increase in traffic again. This is not a location where I believe you're later on going to be able to fix the problem once you create it, because you cannot put a stoplight there. All of this medical waste traffic, the ambulance traffic, is going to go right down 2nd Street. You know, so basically these neighbors we have over here on 2nd Street are going to have Medi Evans in their backyard with their garbage bin showing and their loud, you know, air conditioner. And on the other side, they're going to have traffic from this building, you know, all to profit just a couple of people. And I understand as a commission, you have rules and regulations you need to follow. But when you start waiving them, and you have the opportunity here to say, no, we're not waiving those things. If you don't waive them, this place is not going to make a whole lot of financial sense for any of the people involved. They don't want to, you know, put the sidewalks in because they don't want PennDOT looking at them, and they don't want a highway occupancy survey, or they don't want that requirement on them. And I think a lot of our neighbors may have not have noticed this. I looked again at the plans last night. There is a future plan for them to put another entrance in on 2nd Street that looks like it goes right to a back door that would be putting medical waste. It's probably a pickup and delivery loading dock type of thing. And it's going to be right there in Bev Isaacman's front lawn, you know. I can't even fathom why they want to do this, but I certainly don't think that you all should be allowing them these waivers. And you know, without the waivers, maybe they'll find a better way to do it right here. And the other thing is about the traffic survey. I've heard it said a number of times, the size of the building doesn't mean you have to do a traffic survey. But as our elected officials, you're not stuck with just what you have to do. There are plenty of things you're allowed to do. And a traffic survey certainly is one of them. If you're not willing to do it and you're going to ask the developer to pick someone of their own choosing to do it in their own interest, you know, maybe our neighborhood needs to get together and just commission one of our own. Because I just cannot fathom, given what we've seen in the short time that we've lived here, semis going up and down our street all the time, people flying through just to get from point A to point B. You know, everyone saw the article that was written, I'm sure, by the Harrisburg Magazine yesterday. The reason that was written is that the lady that wrote it drives her commute, comes out of Hershey, off of 81 and right through my neighborhood. And that's how she gets to work every day. Certainly the green belt is a beautiful thing. A lot of people use it. People drive here to walk around this neighborhood from other places. This place is an absolute gem. We looked for a couple of years for the right neighborhood to live in, and you know, we found it, and we'd like to keep it that way. I grew up in a city that had city planners planning it out for decades and decades. I was a little surprised when I moved to Pennsylvania at some of the things I see. Sidewalks. Where I grew up, there's sidewalks everywhere. Sidewalks aren't just a thing rich neighborhoods have. And whenever anything new goes in, the sidewalks have to go in. I know residents, if my sidewalk gets messed up out front, I have to pay for it myself. I know that. That's true all over the country. Why would we let somebody that doesn't even live in our community, bringing people in who don't even reside in our state to do business here, not follow rules that each and every one of us has to do? So sorry I got a little worked up, but I mean, this is an opportunity and this is a bell that once you ring it, will never be unrung again, just like the Wendy's up there. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Debbie. Anybody else? Betsy?
Next, I have Irene Berman Levine.
Hi, I'm under Sam Levine. We've lived at 3501 North 2nd Street for 35 years. So we're not new to the neighborhood. And I do want to, their reaction to this whole plan was probably surprising to many of the commissioners. You have to realize there's a little bit of history here. When Meddy Evans and Woodside built their office, they said it wouldn't disrupt the neighborhood very much. And if you walk on the houses along 2nd Street right opposite them, you'll see many cracks in the foundations that you can feel the vibrations as the construction occurred. And you now see actual foundations that have cracks in when we were told everything would be fine. So there's a little bit of wariness and to it. But the other thing I want to mention is the bus stop for school has been outside my door for 35 years. And we feel the children are so safe there. We are on the lookout, of course, for any problems that they would have at that stop. And to me, it should be considered as to the importance of children being able to get out and not have to have a parent right there as they get off the bus to make sure they would be safe and that there wouldn't be more traffic going down Montrose Street. The other thing I wanted to mention is asking, is there any alternative? Is this set and done that Linlow Properties wants this land? Because I'm really sorry we as a community couldn't have united ahead of time. It would be so wonderful to have a community park in Montrose Park. And just think what a wonderful spot that would be. And I was thinking of the woman who originally donated the land to the Symphony. If perhaps we had all gotten together a little bit earlier when the Symphony could not accept that donation because of the cost of building, if the cost of perhaps naming a park in her name and something could have created a donation. But perhaps Meddy Evans and Woodside, if this plan falls through, would be amenable to neighbors and perhaps wanting to contribute to our neighborhood by providing a very reasonable price tag if we could put a plan together and do some fundraising and naming a park for maintaining the beautiful nature of Montrose Park. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Levine. Betsy, do we have anybody else?
Tanya Leshko would like to make one more brief statement.
Thank you very much. Just very briefly to follow on to what Sam Levine said earlier about the air conditioning on 2nd Street and the deafening noise of the air conditioning unit, which is placed really close on the lot to all of the houses on 2nd Street instead of being placed anywhere near the Meddy Evans building that exists. I am terrible at reading plans, but I'm getting better at it. And if I'm not mistaken, the proposed plans in this lot have a concrete pad for an air conditioning unit right on 2nd Street, right next to all the houses on 2nd Street again. And if the past is any indicator, once again, it will be, bricked in on 3 sides so that the building that they build doesn't have to contend with the effects of that air conditioning, but everybody who lives on 2nd Street will, because that's what happened last time. So, it's not a great, it's coexisting with your neighbors, hopefully matters. And this plan, certainly in that respect, does not help the neighbors. It's going to be even more noise from commercial air conditioning units for the houses right there on Second Street. And those, you know, Second Street's residential. It's a residential neighborhood. So just pointing that out. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tanya. Betsy?
Those are all the people that have contacted me.
Okay, does anybody else wish to speak on the Montrose project issue before we move on to the rest of public comment?
I just had one more small comment I forgot. You know, I contacted PennDOT for our area, and they told me that they suspected that you would do, the township themselves would do a traffic survey, because we do them all the time. We do them with HRG, as a matter of fact. So they seem to think that if we were going to put anything there that might impact Front Street and impact the residential neighborhood, that would be just something, of course, you would do. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I have some more now.
Okay, Jessica Warren, I see.
Yes.
Okay, Jessica?
Thank you. Well, look at that, 2 reactions now. My name is Jessica Warren. I live at 209 Montrose Street, which is the corner of Green and Montrose. And we've lived there for about 8 years. And I'm not from Pennsylvania. My husband is. He is 7 generations, Cumberland County. And we used to live on the other side of the river. And I walked the Greenbelt when I was training for team in training 12 years ago, because my mom had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And anybody who's ever been out has seen purple shirts training and walking. And I have probably put in 500 miles of training on that Greenbelt and walked right down that street long before I lived there. And it's the reason that when we decided we wanted to leave suburbia and the crowdedness that we were living in Cumberland County, that I talked my husband into coming over to the other side of the river, punch our passports, and see what it's like. It's an amazing neighborhood. And we have raised essentially our children there. Many of my neighbors are on this call, and I know that when we moved in, they were super excited to have a family move into that house. When we moved in, our children were 8 and 10. They are now 18 and 20. It is their home. It is our neighborhood. And I know that we take the neighborhood very seriously. We are the second owners of our home. The family that built the home is the home that we purchased it from. It will never be my home. It will always be Lois's house. And that is the purpose of that neighborhood. That is the way that neighborhood feels. It is the way that people treat each other. And you cannot put a price on that. You absolutely cannot. It is, but what I can tell you is that we love to sit on our side porch and drink our coffee in the morning and honestly count the number of people that run through the stop sign at Second and Green and Montrose. There's a very heavy police presence on Montrose and on Green. There's a lot of people who get pulled over for running those stop signs in what is, a normal day, a normal pre-COVID traffic day. And it's a very heavily walked neighborhood. It's a very family-friendly neighborhood. I feel like we were like trendy when we moved in and had kids. And I love seeing now other families moving into the neighborhood with kids. My background is in environmental engineering. My husband works in residential construction. We are honestly very pro-development. I would just ask that the township not offer any waivers and not approve any waivers. The traffic study's been talked about. There's a ton of environmental issues to consider. The property definitely sits in the flood zone. It is a walking neighborhood. I cannot reiterate enough of what everyone has said, but it is an amazing, amazing place to live. And I think that we just want to continue that and really honor the strategic plan that the township has put together for Susquehanna Township 2030. Really honor that, and we value that. And I just want to thank my neighbors and really the township for hearing us out tonight and for offering the opportunity. So thank you.
Thank you.
I have Dan Mundis.
Dan or Dan?
Dan.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, Dan Mundis, 3530 Green Street. Me and my husband, Steve, have lived here for over 20 years. And I have to thank Sam Levin for a previous meeting on the comment that what could go into that other 40%. And he mentioned a massage parlor. I have to say, I said the same thing before that meeting. What happens if this dialysis clinic doesn't fly? Is there going to be an empty building sitting there? Are we going to have a tattoo parlor? We're going to have a massage parlor? Where does it stop? I kind of think we need to kind of explore that, because I guess nothing is guaranteed. But that's really all I have to say. Thank you, Sam.
All right, thank you, Dan.
Sheila Heaps has their hand raised.
It's John again. I have a couple of questions for the commissioners. In the developer's presentation, did they give a reason for why they wanted this particular spot? What other location? Did they look at other locations? And if they did and rejected them, what was it about this particular one that appealed to them?
Mr. President?
That's my first question.
Mr. Heaps?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I am the solicitor for the township, and while we respect everyone's right to comment, and we've certainly heard a lot of passionate comments, and I know the board is taking notes, can't really ask questions, especially given the fact that this has to come before the township on the 22nd, and we have to impartially apply the code and so on and so forth. So I appreciate the questions. I certainly think you should raise them, but we're not in a position to provide those answers. And to a second point that I just want to make respectfully is that in terms of the developer choosing this spot over other spots, it's not something the township can consider when considering whether to approve or not approve these waivers. And no means do I mean to be disrespectful, but I just want to be clear about what we can and can't do.
That's fine, that's good, but trying to understand how a developer wants to move into a predominantly residential neighborhood with a commercial property, it doesn't make sense to me. And I'm just trying to understand, I'm not accusing or anything. I'm just trying to understand what the rationale was that the developer used.
And I understand that, sir. And again, with all respect possible, that's probably a question the developer has to answer, not the township.
And will the developer be at the July 22nd meeting so he could answer this question?
I would anticipate the developer will be there to present, but I don't represent the developer.
Right.
But again, Mr. Heaps, I want to be clear. If your questions are reasonable, they're probably just better directed at the developer.
Thank you. I'm done.
Thank you. Thank you, Sheila.
I'm here too.
Sheila's here too.
Hi, Sheila. Does anybody else wish to speak on Montrose before we go into general public comment? Going once, going twice. All right. Is there anybody on the,
Amber Carmo had her hand up.
Amber,
I do. Sorry, I'm on double mute. So can you hear
double
me?
mute. Yeah, you broke through your double
Okay,
mute.
I was on my cell phone. So, my name is Amber Carmo. I am no longer a township resident, but I became one 42 years ago, and my mother still resides in 3430 Green Street. Her name is Daisy Mae Carmo. And my question, and I know you just mentioned no asking questions, so this is sort of rhetorical at this point, but what is the standard by which the commission grants waivers? And is it in what's best for the public interest or the private interest? And who's considered to be the public interest if that is the standard? So that is my comment. I mean, obviously, you've heard a lot of impassioned concerns from the residents who are there. And as I said, I'm no longer a resident, but I'm in the neighborhood frequently because that's where my mother lives and I'm in Lower Paxton. So that's my question to the board. Just what do you take into consideration and whose interests do you take into consideration when granting these kinds of waivers? Thank you.
Well, obviously, we take into interest the residents first and foremost, and the health and safety of our neighborhoods. And I won't get into a legal definition. Mr. Miller would be better able to do that. But I can tell you that this board has fought requests, for instance, against sidewalk waivers for many, many years. And it's at the point where, they're starting to stop asking for waivers from sidewalk requirements, which is a good thing. I wish the boards over the previous 40 years had been doing this, but they hadn't. And so what their criteria were, I don't know. So it's probably a broad set of criteria that a board could consider in terms of considering waiver requests. But beyond, that example that I gave you, I would turn to our solicitor, Mr. Miller, to give a description of what the board may or may not consider. Although I, for myself, will tell you that it's always in the public interest.
Again, we're kind of at the limit of what we can do while the matter is still in front of us, so that we can make sure that taxpayer dollars are spent appropriately and create a clear record. But I will say that there are issues that have been brought up this evening, some of which we can address, some of which we cannot address, such as medical waste, which is not within our jurisdiction. Say that the board is going to apply its zoning code to the facts as presented by the developer, and certainly take into consideration all of the issues that the community has raised to the extent that they are permitted under the code to consider them. I know this sounds like a dry and lawyerly answer, and the reason it sounds like a dry and lawyerly answer is because at the end of the day, we have to apply the law and the code to the facts. I will say to the members of the public that the board has heard, continues to hear, continues to consider matters that have been brought up by the public. I will also say that on the 22nd, the board will certainly deliberate and vote publicly on what has been presented on the basis of what it can consider. And this is a weighty and important decision. And there will be due consideration of everything. That's the most that we can really say at this point. I hope that the members of the public appreciate that we have to do it this way in order to, again, create a clean record in case it goes further than the zoning hearing board. So being careful to make clear that we're going to do this by the numbers, by the book, and appropriately to the best of our ability as a board.
I hope that helps, Amber. Anybody else on this topic?
I have one more, Leah Murdoff.
Hey, Leah.
Hi, thanks. Sorry, I had to go out for a minute and come back. So I just wanted to say to the commissioners, that I really want to thank you and say that I really appreciate that you're in a difficult position, that you have a lot of things to consider and a lot of interest to consider. And I really appreciate, I think we all really appreciate, that you are listening, you're hearing, that you're helping us to feel understood, and that, we trust you as our elected officials to really, and to take care of us, to take care of the integrity of the neighborhood. And, we're sort of placing those values once again, not just when we voted, but we're placing those values once again in your hands when you have to make these decisions. And I just wanted to say thank you for, really carefully considering everything that we've said in your deliberations.
Thanks, Lee. Appreciate it. Anybody else? Okay. Does anybody wish to address the board? Again, the plan will be considered at our July 22nd meeting, and we're going to discuss it later in this meeting in terms of logistics, but we plan on holding that meeting in person at the Township building. So does anybody have any other public comment they'd like to address to the board at this point on any other matters?
Megan Carnes had indicated she wanted to speak on a different topic. So
okay.
Hello, thank you for listening to me again. I heard the individuals advocating for the in-person meeting and heard that that's going to happen. And I understand that and I support that, but I'm also going to say that we are now in a post-pandemic world, and Susquehanna Township has shown that you can do virtual meetings. And this is about accessibility and inclusion. And you need to continue to add that option. This is how people who have mobility issues can participate, how people who have busy schedules can participate, how people who have children can participate. If you only have an in-person meeting in July, I won't be there because I'll be dealing with my children. But if you continue to offer an option for in-person, for virtual participation, me and a lot of people like me can continue to participate. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to address the board?
No. We're done.
I wanted to make a quick comment also regarding the meetings. And I second what Megan is saying about making them accessible to people. I would also ask that the Zoom meetings be kept and maintained on the website in the same way that prior recordings of the meetings were. I reached out and found out that since the pandemic and the initiation of Zoom, after the minutes are taken, the meetings are being disposed of and not available anymore. And while the minutes are fantastic, it doesn't always give the full picture. Thank you.
Well, they are carried on YouTube. How long are they carried on YouTube, Betsy?
So since we've been going to Zoom, we haven't been posting them because our videographer was the one that put them on YouTube. So they stay on YouTube. We just haven't posted any of the Zoom ones.
Okay, but once we go back to the in-person meetings, they'll be on YouTube for X number of years.
Correct.
Okay. We're getting back to normal soon, I hope. Okay, anybody else have a question for the board before we move on to our agenda? All right, well, thank you everybody for your time and attention. On behalf of the board, we all know how important this is to you and your neighborhood and quality of life. And that's what we do. That's why we're sitting on this board, because we care about our neighborhoods. And we will keep that's true, Steve, and we will keep your best interests at heart. So thank you, everybody. All right, moving on to the agenda, the terraces at Maplewood. Betsy, do you want to take that? Or do you want me to read it and kick it off?
I can read it and kick it off.
Okay.
Sorry. A final subdivision land development plan to construct 236 multifamily units, including 5 18-unit apartment buildings and 146 townhouse units, a community clubhouse, the extension of Elmwood Drive, private access drives, parking lots, trails, and various stormwater facilities. This property is currently undeveloped. It's zoned business, office, residential, and consists of approximately 24.8 acres. It is in Ward 9. The plan was recommended for approval by the Planning Commission contingent upon the approval of the following waivers: preliminary plan procedure and the private service drive material specifications. These were both approved by the board on May 13th, 2021. The plan was also recommended for approval by the Planning Commission contingent upon the following conditions. One, that all the remaining comments have been addressed. That comment can actually be removed because they have all been addressed now. Provide executed easement agreements for stormwater utilities and snow dump area, and provide recreational fee in lieu of per the 2006 settlement agreement.
Okay, is there a motion on the waivers as outlined by Betsy Logan?
You approved the waivers at the May 13th meeting.
Okay.
You just didn't approve the plan.
We're just approving the plan. Okay.
Yep.
Is there a motion on the floor of the plan?
Motion to approve.
With the 2 conditions, correct?
Yes, Mr. President.
All right, thank you, Tom.
Second.
Moved and seconded by Commissioner Sanderson. Any comments or questions? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed?
No. Fleming.
No, not opposed.
I am opposed. Fleming.
Fleming's opposed. All right, so it's a 5-1 vote. Motion carries. Next up is ratify and confirm the hiring of seasonal park and recreation staff and their respective hourly rates. Dave, Betsy.
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to address this, Mr. President. So in your packet was again a listing of seasonal staff members that were hired really in 2 primary areas. One relates to staffing of the summer playground program.
Sorry.
That is actually just started this week. June the 21st was the first day of that program, and then the others relate to maintenance staff that is providing park maintenance and some staffing and just kind of general maintenance and janitorial work within the parks. From a budgetary perspective, all of the hourly rates are consistent with both the adopted 2021 budget as well as the reopening plan that the Board of Commissioners approved back in March when the decision was made to reopen park facilities and to offer the summer playground program. So again, with that, be happy to answer any questions. Things are going well with all of these employees. Things are going well thus far with the summer playground program. So this is before the board for your ratification confirmation.
Okay, is there a motion to ratify the hirings as described by Glasser?
So moved. Second, Napper.
Moved and seconded. Comments or questions by the board? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Motion carries. Discussion, McNaughton Playground Project.
I'd be happy to take that as well, Mr. President. In your packet was a memorandum from Doug Canals, the Parks and Recreation Director, addressed to myself. but I'd be happy to go over that in summary. We were approached by the McNaughton family, particularly Mark McNaughton, in regards to replacing the playground equipment at Christian McNaughton Memorial Park. Mr. McNaughton, and I believe there's a family foundation, has agreed to purchase new equipment and to pay for the installation of the equipment through that foundation. Again, it's my understanding that the park was named in honor of his son. So the offer is extremely generous. As you'll see in the included quote, we're talking about an improvement in excess of $40,000 that the McNaughtons and the McNaughton Foundation is looking at funding for the community. The one request is that the cost of installation, which again is itemized on the quote, it's $10,000, would be considered towards a credit to future park and rec fees for a subsequent phase of development for the McNaughton Company. So again, the majority of all of the equipment cost would be borne by the McNaughtons and its foundation, and then there would be this slight credit that would be considered towards a fee in lieu of fees for a future phase of development. The RAC, the Recreation Advisory Committee, has reviewed the request and they are recommending approval of the credit concept and looking for the board's concurrence to permit Mr. McNaughton and the foundation to replace this equipment at the Christian McNaughton Memorial Park behind the Township building.
Okay. There's a proposal before us. Is there a motion to kickstart conversation?
So moved,
Motion.
Napper.
Second. Tom, fine.
Okay. Any discussion, questions by members of the board? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next up, recreational programming.
Yeah, again, there's a correspondence in your packet from Doug. Again, this is another item coming out of the most recent Recreation Advisory Committee meeting. The department, the Park and Recs Department, is looking at the potential of beginning programming again in the fall of 2021 as COVID restrictions are eased and things seemingly continue to improve from a public health perspective and public safety perspective. There again, the letter goes into more detail. Really, we're not asking for any definitive action from the Board of Commissioners this evening. However, as you can imagine, with offering programming and planning programming, there's a lot of planning work and preparatory work that would go into that. So we're just trying to get some I guess start the conversation about the potential of resuming programming in the fall. And again, obviously, any programming that would occur would be consistent with COVID guidelines and other protocols that may either be required by the Board of Commissioners or any other either federal or state public health agency. So again, we can defer this conversation to a future meeting. Doug, unfortunately, had a family commitment and was not able to make it. But if there's any comments that the board has on this or any concerns that the board has, at this point, please feel free to express those. But really, we're looking at just beginning this conversation.
All right. Jody, any thoughts as one of the rec liaisons?
This is Doug.
I agree with Dave's idea to defer this conversation.
Okay. Did I hear Doug's on the phone?
Doug, are you on the phone?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I am.
I didn't realize you were on the phone. So do you have any other comments at this point, or is it something we can pick up at a?
Yeah, I mean, the big thing is I just need a general sense of, can I move forward in terms of the planning process, identifying programs and the appropriate personnel, either contracted or in-house, to run these programs in the near future, so I can plan essentially at this point in time, because I can't wait and try and plan it and promote it in a short window of time.
So Doug, am I hearing you say that you need some kind of approval to move forward to start making plans?
Yeah, because if we would be contracting, especially third-party contractors to run programming for us, I would imagine I would be bringing those kinds of agreements to the RAC and commissioners over the next 2 months before we get into September as a possible start date. I was envisioning an approval or disapproval at this point in time to move forward, just so I can begin the process of planning, because we would need to look at an August promotional period for September programming.
Well, it sounds like we have a couple of RAC meetings coming up, and a couple of commissioner meetings coming up. So is there anything you need from us tonight, Doug, other than a general sense that this sounds like a good track that you're on?
If you as commissioners are comfortable with me moving forward, at least in the planning process, and starting to engage third-party contractors to run programming, and then we can maybe in the next meeting or two finalize everything, I would be comfortable with that.
Okay, well, why don't you start working with Dave and the two liaisons, and they're always great to bounce things off of, and they have a good sense of where the board's at. But I personally have a lot of comfort in you and Dave and Jody and Mona in terms of starting to get this train back on the track. Is there anybody else, other members of the board, have any thoughts on this?
I'm comfortable with Doug starting to look at programming, explore what programming we could offer, and then bringing it to the RAC and the board.
Sounds good.
I agree.
All right.
Agreed.
Bada bing. Go for it, Doug.
Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion, municipal building reopening. We had talked previously about holding our first in-person meeting on July 22nd. That was in conversation with the conversation on the Montrose project. But that would be the first meeting that the board would have engaged in since March of 2020 in person. But we also need to address, and you all know this, every month since probably last April, we've been going month to month with a resolution as to whether or not we ought to keep the building closed due to COVID. And every month we have done that as a precaution against COVID infection. But things seem to be lifting, and they're, want to start the conversation to see if there's a consensus that we begin to consider opening it. And Dave, I'd start off with you, since it's your crew that you're running there and your building that you have to oversee. Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, again, township staff feels comfortable, and we feel comfortable. I feel comfortable. Rob feels comfortable with the concept of potentially reopening the building on July the 6th. That would provide us with essentially next week, and that would be the first day back following the observance of the 4th of July. 4th of July holiday. I think, as we've spoken about, it's time to try to move back to normal. And I think if the board is so inclined, we would have no issue with making the preparations that we need to make over the course of that week to be in a position to reopen on July the 6th. With the understanding that we would probably limit access to the building to the front door, which is on the main floor level, and continuing to keep the bottom floor locked, again, with the hopes of kind of controlling movement within the building to try to mitigate risk. But that being said, July 6th is doable for us if the commissioners are so inclined to want to reopen the building.
Would you recommend that visitors continue to wear masks as they enter the building?
Yeah, I mean, I think, obviously we don't have an understanding of folks' vaccine status. We're not asking for folks to show vaccine cards. So, that would probably be the most prudent thing to do. But again, we recognize that things are evolutionary in that regard as well. So.
Okay.
But I think on those specifics, if you're okay with that, we can get together and again try to develop an approach and a plan that's reasonable and tries to balance people's comfort, people's access to the public space, and also the safety issue.
Okay. All right. So is there a motion to ask the manager Kratzer to begin preparations and develop a plan and protocol to open the building as of July 6th, along the lines that we've just discussed in terms of operation, keeping the bottom door closed, mask wearing, et cetera?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Pine.
Second, Commissioner Fleming.
Seconded by Commissioner Fleming. Does anybody have any comments or questions?
Mr. President, just very quickly, I would just say, I would ask rather that when that plan is developed, we make sure to publish it on our website. I find it easier to share links, especially on social media and things like that, and in messages that we send out. So whenever that is developed, just putting some sort of statement on our website saying that the building is back open, what the parameters are, and things of that sort.
Great idea.
Absolutely.
Any other comments or questions?
Mr. President, I would just ask that we remain flexible as well. Whether or not, Manager Kratzer would have to go back and close that building, that the public would be would honor that and be flexible at his choice.
Absolutely. Yep. All righty. Any other comments or questions?
Just very quickly, Mr. President, as you alluded to, it has been since I believe the exact date was March 12th, 2020, since we had our last in-person meeting in the building. And I still remember it vividly. I still remember that executive session and discussing COVID-19. Sorry, I'm back now. I had to treat a low for my daughter and some other things, so sorry about that. But I remember it vividly, and I just want to commend Manager Kratzer, Public Safety Director Martin, Chief Drees, our EMS personnel. I mean, just from the briefings we got from the very start, it was clear that everyone took this seriously. And as a result, I think we managed it quite well among the staff. I certainly think we, made the decisions in the best interest of public safety. And so I just want to thank them for their efforts. This has not been easy. Coming to them for recommendations and thoughts. And I think they acted prudently every step of the way. And I just wanted to acknowledge that and thank them for their efforts to manage a global pandemic here in Susquehanna Township. So just thank them for that. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. All right, any other comments? All those in favor? I'm sorry, was there a comment? Can't wait to get back in person. All right, so we have a bunch of ayes. Is there any nays?
Aye.
No nays. Motion passes unanimously. Sort of. All right, traffic study requests. Chief, are you still on?
I'm here.
All right. Looks like we have two on the agenda. One is a three-way stop at the intersection of Diane Drive and Vesta. I don't know if you, I don't know who proposed that. Was that Steve?
No, Commissioner, that actually came through citizens that I did bring it to commissioners. I believe that's actually the 3rd Ward. So I'm corrected on that, but yeah, we will do a traffic study on that, as well as some others that are ongoing right now.
Okay. And I have one, the second one, brought to you by my friendly backyard former fire chief, speed calming on 39th Street. And, of all the complaints that I hear, this is, it's legit. I mean, there's a lot of traffic. It's a big cut through from Elmerton over to 22, and speed is an issue. There are a couple of families who moved in and have kids, and there's a couple of illegal basketball hoops up there. So if you could have a look at that as well. And Chief, what you might do is just talk to Dick Gray himself and get a sense of it, what he's looking for. So he can best describe it. He lives on it. I can only see it up over the hill. So if you could have your officer reach out to him.
Absolutely. We will definitely talk to the chief. And just for the record, there was a couple other requests that have come in over the past month. Traffic calming, we're going to do a study for a portion of Apple Tree Road. I've already discussed that with Commissioner Fleming, and a request has come in for traffic calming on Bradley Road. And just for all the commissioners, Bradley Road runs east-west off of North Progress Avenue in Woodridge Estates. And but over the years, and when I say years, I mean, essentially 20 to 30 years, more and more developments have been developed on the west end of the development, increasing a lot of traffic. So we can do a traffic calming study for there as well.
Great. Anybody else have any traffic issues they'd like to discuss?
Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
I had received recently and I haven't had a chance to review it or consider it myself personally, but I thought I would bring it up since it'll be another month before we get into this issue of traffic studies. But I had a request on South 32nd Street. Again, I haven't had a chance to review, the specific request myself with a constituent who brought it up. But for me, that kind of runs second to requests I've had for Larry Drive and Shield Street and Wilhelm. So I think it's just a matter of managing these, I guess, and trying to work our way through them. And perhaps I'll just touch base with Chief about some of these, going forward.
Okay.
Just wanted to bring them up.
Oh, yeah, I have a question. This isn't specifically for public safety director Martin, but So we just talked about a whole laundry list of traffic studies where there are issues that need to be addressed in the township. So I'm wondering if there's a reason that relating to the project, the proposed project, 3405 North Front, that we are not conducting a traffic impact study. We haven't required the developer to conduct one. And as Debbie Tramatine pointed out in her comments, she had spoken with PennDOT, and they expressed that we have every right to conduct a traffic impact study, because if we wait until the 22nd, it will be too late to assess anything by then, and it doesn't stand the reason to build something and then find out there are issues afterwards. So I guess my question is why we wouldn't conduct a study on a busy corner like that, putting a business in a residential neighborhood. And I'll, in addition to my question, I'll state, I believe we should conduct a traffic impact study. It has, I'm not saying anything else about the plan, except that I think we should conduct a traffic impact study before we consider the plan. There was a waiver. They didn't, the developer wasn't required to complete one.
I don't know. I didn't go to those meetings. Dave, do you know?
We got the information in our packet.
Well, I didn't read that or retain it.
I don't believe there's a waiver, but Bob, can you, as it relates to the traffic impact study, because of the thresholds that are provided for in the ordinance, but I don't know if you have any thoughts perhaps to address the Commissioner Barczyk's thought. Again, you're absolutely correct. There's no reason why we ourselves could not conduct some sort of evaluation. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Bob.
Sure. In our subdivision and land development ordinance, there is a paragraph that relates to traffic impact studies and the requirements for those studies. And basically, it says any development or building in excess of 20,000 square feet or more that would generate more than 750 trips per day, a traffic study is required. However, the board at its discretion may require studies for other developments or other projects that are not or below that threshold. So the board certainly can do that and can make this a requirement for the Montrose project or any other project for that matter that is expected to generate traffic that would affect the existing development around it.
Well, we should conduct a traffic impact study.
That's a motion. I'll second it.
That's a motion, yes.
Second.
Wait, who's going to do this? All right, it's been moved and seconded, so we can discuss it. Who's going to do it?
Who do we generally have conduct our traffic impact studies?
Well, we're talking about speed calming on 39th Street. We're talking about, I don't know that Rob is equipped to have his force do a traffic study.
I wasn't suggesting it. And the outset, I said I wasn't asking this of.
I'm not finished yet.
Martin.
I don't disagree with you at all. In fact, I think it should be done. My question is, who would pay for it?
Well, since the township is not requiring the developer to do it, I guess the township would have to pay for it, or you could have required the developer to do it.
At this point, the township would pay for it.
Okay, so the motion is moved by Jody, seconded by Tom to have the township pay for a traffic study to support a development project. Is that right?
It's not to support a development project. It's a traffic impact study to determine what the traffic impact would be on the neighborhood. It's not to get a set outcome. It's to determine what the impact would be.
But again, who would do it?
Well, HRG, of course. They do all of our engineering and traffic that the Chief Martin cannot do.
Well, I'm just concerned, and you know, I'll support this, but I'm just concerned about precedents where traffic studies or any part of a development that should rightfully be on the shoulders of a developer aren't borne by the developer, but are borne by the taxpayers at the last minute.
Well,
I mean, this has been going on for a long time, and you've been at all those planning commission meetings. Why didn't that happen or become a topic of conversation if it hasn't before tonight?
I did speak to it. Maybe you have to talk to the planning commission about that.
Well, they only
Maybe you
make
need to talk to our engineer about that.
They only, no, that's why you're the liaison, Jody. They make recommendations.
Actually, Gary Rothrock is the liaison. He sits up there on the dais, but.
Well, you're number 2. And you go.
And I was there and I did request these things. You said yourself you didn't read the minutes or go to the meeting. So yes,
No,
I have been asking for this.
Didn't retain it. I just, you know, and again, we're all in favor of safety and we want this to be done right if it's going to be done. But I just am concerned about the last minute nature, you know, traffic studies on the fly. Yeah, I don't know why that's so funny, Jody. I mean, the whole reason we set this up.
Because it's a red herring. That's why it's so funny, Frank. You're making excuses, lame excuses.
What's lame about it? I mean, yeah, let's do a traffic study. It's just a matter of timing. This could have been done much sooner in the process, and I wish it had.
People have been emailing you about this. They've been emailing everybody and calling everybody. It's not.
But you know what I heard from you? 0. Nothing. And it's your ward. They're your neighbors. I mean.
And I've been in communication with them.
We rely on you for your expertise. And just
bullshit, Frank.
Okay, well put.
Yeah, because that's what this is. Why don't we just vote? I call the question.
All right, call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed? All right, I assume, Sean, how did you vote?
Sorry, I voted aye. I was tapping my phone. Aye.
Steve?
Napper votes aye.
All right, so we got a traffic study. There you go, Bob. Bob, will that be done in time for us to consider it?
For the meeting of the 22nd?
Yes.
We'll do our best. Just further clarify this. Now, the board is authorizing us to do a traffic study. The traffic study that I've been thinking about this is, I don't feel should be a full-blown traffic study, but rather identify the specific issues at hand that were brought up by the residents in the past several meetings. Those specifically being traffic on Front Street, the left turn situation from southbound Front Street to Montrose. We all know that there is a restriction on left turns during peak hours from Montrose to southbound on Front, and 2nd Street and the Green Street area. So a normal traffic study would identify a scope of work that is yet to be determined. But in answer to your question, Mr. President, we can have it done by the 22nd, but it would not be a scope that would be consistent or would be similar to the scope of a larger development.
Well, would it have any useful impact on our ability to decide on the project?
I think it definitely would have a useful impact. And again, the board according to the subdivision and land development ordinance, does have the ability to require traffic studies that are below the minimum set in the saldo. So it would be a useful tool for helping the board to decide, and it would also be a useful tool for conveying the traffic impact of the property to the residents of the area.
My recommendation, Mr. President, is that in order for Mr. Rubik to be able to get this done by the 22nd or in advance of the 22nd, his scope be accepted by the board, and that we move forward with the study and we can take up its admissibility and application under the saldo later. But in terms of getting it done, that's what I would recommend.
Okay, is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
By Commissioner Sanderson, second by Commissioner Pine. Any comments?
Yes, Bob, I have a question. So when we say traffic study, they're the kind of traffic studies that Chief Martin conducts. When you say traffic impact study, though, determining the impact of the traffic on the neighborhood from the proposed development. Is that, I mean, I'm understanding that's what a traffic impact study is, not only telling us what exists as far as traffic in the neighborhood. I mean, we know that, but I know you would have to lay that out in hard numbers, but is it going to tell us what impact the proposed development would have on the neighborhood as far as traffic?
Yes, I would propose that the scope be, and I'm just thinking out loud now, but the scope would do two things. It would take a look at the existing traffic along Front Street and within the Montrose Park development, not the entire first ward or anything like that, but just specifically maybe a couple blocks in radii around the existing or the proposed development. And then also it would determine what impact there would be on the existing neighborhood related to traffic volumes coming from and going to Front Street, Montrose, 2nd Street, and perhaps several other intersections in the area. In other words, the neighborhood that the residents talked about earlier in our meeting tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. President.
Sure.
I would also encourage, and I don't have the first idea about how any of this is done, but I know we have seen in some of the communication from the residents of that neighborhood and heard tonight about the lessened effect because of the lack of the state, being back in person. To the extent possible, if we could gather data from sort of the pre-March of 2020 from PennDOT, or if there is an entity, if we have it for something else that was done in the area, if our officers have it, or I think that would be helpful too, because, as we've mentioned, we're sort of slowly but surely returning to normal, and those volumes are going to tick up. I mean, as soon as the governor or whomever gives the order for state workers to come back in, then it's, all bets are off. So I would just encourage, to the extent possible, and I don't know that it is, but I just want to put that out there as well, that we gather some data on what the volume was like prior to our shutdown for COVID.
Commissioner, we will exhaust all the resources to try to get that information. We have not done any traffic studies on Front Street and the area for many years. So we would have to rely on perhaps, I don't think there's enough time to do counts and then convert those counts into impacts, but perhaps we can get some historical data pre-COVID along Front Street specifically that would identify the differential between what the traffic volume was pre-COVID and what it is now, and what it is expected to be once the state opens up again.
Commissioner, I know I'll work with Mr. Rubik to make sure that the study itself is data that we can rely on. And if it turns out that we can't capture that data in a way that is replicable and defensible, then we'll deal with that. But we'll do our best.
Thank you both.
PennDOT may have some of those numbers because they were doing traffic counts and studies up on the corner of Lingelstown Road and Front Street and that stretch when they put in that bike path. And the traffic that's traveling there, most of it was coming from the Capitol. If you remember when they changed Front Street, they reduced a lane. So that's traffic that was traveling past through this area to get to that point from the Capitol.
Our first data source will be PennDOT, and we'll include those exact areas that you mentioned, Commissioner.
All right, good.
I
Any other
think we
comments?
have
or
a
questions?
motion, a second.
Yes, we have a comment. We have a motion and a second. Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Bob, just curious, do you know about how much this is going to cost? I hate throwing-
I wouldn't want to venture. I will, as soon as we get the thing scoped, I will let you know, but I wouldn't want to venture a guess at this point in time.
Understood.
Again, it's not going to be a full-blown traffic impact study. It's going to be a several page report that identifies all the things that we talked about. So I don't expect that it's going to involve a significant amount of money.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, we still have 2 openings on the Human Relations Commission. Any candidates tonight? Search goes on. Any commissioner comments before we close? Any other business?
Motion to adjourn.
There we go.
Second, I'll be Fred for tonight.
You got it.
Form imitation of the leader of the band. All right, it's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Motion carries. Good night, everybody.
Take care.
Good night,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you.